Well, I was a journalist for 35 years, roughly, in a lot of different papers. And I ended up at the Times Colonist in the early 2000s, I guess. And I actually had a weekly column there because I was an assistant editorial writer. And I used to write columns about the environment, and I wrote a couple of columns about global warming from a critical perspective. And one of them was a column on a movie that was called The $8 Billion Global Warming Swindle, or something of that sort. And the response to that was negative in the letters to the editor, usually positive in personal emails that they send you. But anyway, Andrew Weaver, who is Canada's leading climatologist or something, climate modeler, wrote a letter to the editor in which they said that I was scientifically illiterate. And I thought, I don't think so. You know, I mean, I've read, for example, Karl Popper pretty much from cover to cover, and I know how science works. And so I thought, maybe I am. So I'm going to investigate this further. And the result of that was, after 3 years, this is in 2007, and after 3 years I produced False Alarm, which I call my battleship. And False Alarm was, I just took a look at climate science. I didn't look at the economics of it very much. I didn't look much at the sociology of it very much. It was mostly just, does this make any sense? And I kept, as I was writing it and researching it, I kept thinking, this can't be right. People can't actually think this. I couldn't possibly write. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a climate scientist. And yet it's so obvious. There's these huge holes in the logic, holes in the science, holes in the way that we're supposed to be approaching it, that I just absolutely couldn't believe it. And so, well, okay. And I wrote the book, and I self-published it, and that was fine. And it sold, I don't know, 600-700 copies or something like that overall. And it still sells a copy or two every year, you know. But it was a pretty thorough examination of the climate science. And then that came out in 2010. And then this one, Through the Looking Glass, which is my next one, I brought that out in 2023, and I also self-published it because, you know, why not? And it was bringing it up to date to net zero. I didn't include net zero in the first one because it hadn't been invented yet. And the net zero thing is, once again, is completely insane. It just makes absolutely no sense from any perspective. So I tried to look at it from a bunch of different perspectives. First of all, I dealt with the climate information itself, which was kind of a summary of the first book. And then I started to look at net zero itself and the way the IPCC approaches it. And then the last few chapters are mainly about the reasons why net zero exists in the first place, because there's no scientific reason for it, there's no climate reason for it. Economically, it's crazy. So what is behind this? And so I'm going to quote from Aristotle here, because I'm working on a book on Plato and Aristotle at the moment, because that's my idea of a good time. And Aristotle said, with a true view, all the facts harmonize. With a false one, they soon clash. And they clash. So I thought, what is the true view that underlies the climate crisis, so-called? And I believe it is that the United Nations, which is the source behind the IPCC and the Intergovernmental Panel and all of the fear that we have, is aimed at creating some kind of global socialist system. You know, and this sounds like conspiracy theory, and I think to myself, this can't be right. But it is. It's a global socialist system, and what scares me most about it is, A, they want us to be poorer. Most people don't want to be poorer. They want us to be less individualistic. Most of us would like to be individualistic in the West, because that's what the West is. And they want us to change human nature. And every system that's tried to change human nature has been a disaster. There's Russia, there's China, there's Korea, there's Albania. I mean, there's a long, long list of societies that have tried to create this perfect Platonic republic society, and they failed. And one of the reasons they failed is, A, they don't give their people a decent standard of living, and B, they're trying to change human nature so people will accept a lousy standard of living. It's not going to happen. Or at least the only way it can happen is if you set up a dictatorial kind of fascist or ultra-communist or some kind of system like that.
An eco-dictatorship.
Basically,
Deutsche Bank wants.
An eco-dictatorship is it. So I was a Marxist when I was a student, believe it or not. You know, I can't believe it. I don't even really should admit that, but I was. And like everybody else, I grew out of it. But I read a lot of Marx when I was young. And one of the things I read in Marx is called the German ideology. And Marx, in that, talks about when we have the full socialist society, everybody will pretty much do what they like. You know, they can be a shepherd, they can be a fisherman, or they can be a writer, or they can be a researcher, whatever they want to do. And at the end of the day, they will not actually have a career, they will just do whatever they want to do. Now, this is the young Marx, and it's incredibly naive, and it's really almost stupid, you know, unless we suddenly discover a source of energy like the sun that powers everything and makes everything very inexpensive. But this is what they're proposing. And I also quoted from a book called The Re-Enchantment of the World by a guy called Berman. And it's the same thing. It's like this kind of kumbaya. We're all going to sit down by the campfire and all our differences are going to disappear. We're going to accept that the planet is somehow or another not able to support us, even though it has for the last, say, 15, 20,000, well, the last 8,000 years, I'd say, since we've had civilization. So it is incredibly naive, but it's also incredibly dangerous. And if you want to look for the model for the type of society they plan for us, have a look at George Orwell's 1984. Because that's it. Everybody is under the thumb. Everybody does what they're told. And if they don't, well, there's the gulags. I mean, because basically 1984 was originally called 1948. And it was intended to refer to Russia, you know, Soviet Russia.